Hector Bravo Unhinged. Chaos is now in session.
Welcome to Hector Bravo Unhinged, episode number 1. Today's guest is Brian James. Brian spent 29 years as an inmate in the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. He has been out for 824 days. Is that correct?
824 days.
824 days. We're going to jump right into it, man. How you doing today, Brian?
I'm doing good, man. I was telling you earlier, 1991, I think, was the last time I was in San Diego. I was with my grandparents. We used to always go right here to Mission Bay. So it feels good, man. It feels good.
1991. What was good? Who were the rappers at the time? What was on TV?
Man, I think I was listening to My Posse's on Broadway at the time. I think this is way back. Different Strokes was probably the show at the time. But we used to come every year, and we would go to Campland right here. That was sort of like a family tradition.
So I know it's one thing to experience change, generational change, while being out on the streets. For instance, myself, I saw the change from 91 to 2024 out here. How was it for you, man, stepping away for a long period of time and coming back? How did that feel? Did it feel like a time zone of some sort?
Yeah, I mean, it still does. Just, driving through downtown San Diego, just seeing it, the homeless situation, just the energy, how fast everybody's moving, everybody's hustling. And it's not so much, as before. It's like you graduate, you go to high school, you go to college, you get a job, where nowadays it's not necessarily that. Your life can shoot in a million different directions, and it's just crazy. 824 days. So I'm gathering information, and I'm hanging on to the tail of a rocket. That's what it feels like.
Feels good, huh?
Yeah, it feels amazing.
What year did you get incarcerated in?
1993, October.
1993, October. Mm-hmm. Man, I told you, my dad graduated the academy in October 1993. He was a CO.
That would make us, I was telling you, we were both K numbers.
K number,
Yeah, we both, that was.
Do you have your CDC number memorized?
I have my CDC number tattooed on my back, actually.
No way,
dude. K14664.
All right.
I think I got it probably like maybe around 2002.
Damn, what was the reason behind that?
I thought it was cool. It was my name. I had a life sentence. I was never going home. My cell at the time had done sort of like a portrait of sort of like a gangster dude in handcuffs or something. And it popped in my mind. I was like, throw my CDC number on the back. And I've covered up and removed like a few tattoos over the years, but I'm gonna probably hang on to that one.
You're gonna hang on to that one?
Yeah, just to remember.
So you got locked up as a juvenile case?
As a juvenile, yeah. I was 16.
How old were you?
16 years old.
16?
Mm-hmm.
How old were you when you got arrested?
16.
16.
I got arrested the following day.
How old were you when you touched down at a state penitentiary?
I was 18 years old. 18?
Yeah. And what prison was that?
Salinas Valley. We opened up Salinas Valley. I was in Wasco. I went to see my counselor, and he said, you're a level 4, you're a 180. There's some new prisons that had just opened up. High Desert had been open a little bit, Salinas Valley. And they dropped that bag in front of my cell about 3 months later, said, put all your property in here. You're going to Salinas Valley. It had been open probably for about a week. When I walked in, there was still like the dust and the concrete like on the floor. And they literally told us, like, what job do you want? You want to work in the kitchen? Like, what was available? That's how empty the prison was. Buses from Pelican Bay, Folsom.
So you activated Salinas Valley?
Yeah.
Was it rocking and rolling?
It was rocking and rolling.
Was property getting distributed? Benches for this race, pull-up bars for this race?
That's exactly what it was. And, for me at the time, I'm 18. I'm a kid. I'm a teenager. So, I just played my role, kept my back against the wall. I watched, I listened, I observed. But, yeah, there were murders over benches. There were murders over pull-up bars. People maimed, people slaughtered over water fountains.
So the question I was going to ask you right before you gave me that information was, were they more peace talks, or was it resolved through violence? And it sounds like it was resolved through violence.
Yeah, it was 100% violence, especially at that time. It wasn't, that was how you gained your respect. And, it's so much different from the times of today, but you had to commit violence. You had to show that you were ready and willing at any second to commit violence.
We're going to dive into that. What was the term that you got sentenced to?
My term was 20 years to life.
20 years to
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
Okay. And I speak often about how when you had when you got all day, that meant life, especially in the 90s.
If there is a letter at the end of your sentence, you're never going home. If 1 year to life, 1 day to life, if there's a life sentence at the end, yeah, you're done. You're not going home.
And I need you to explain to me and to the public what the mentality is of an individual walking into a California prison knowing you're never getting out. Is it hopeless?
Initially I went in there with at least some hope. It's impossible as a teenager to accept that I'm going to die in this place right here, despite the fact that, the courts told me that, probation, parole, all these people told me that, you're not going home. You're never going home. So when ultimately I went in front of the parole board on my second year in prison, and they basically are just going to tell you in 20 years, this is what we expect from you. Your GED or high school diploma, get a trade, get a vocation, stay out of trouble, learn about yourself. And I said, okay, sir, if I check all those boxes right there, will I be able to go home in 20 years? They laughed at me.
Damn.
They laughed at me. They say, your parole officer hasn't even been born yet. So it was in that moment that I gave up. I said, everything I need to learn is right here in the yard. There's no reason for me to go to school. There's no reason for me to get a voc, a trade, or anything. I need to be the best gang member, the best convict that I can possibly be, because this is my life.
So when he told you that, you had made the conscious decision, hey, this is the route that I'm going because I have no choice. I have to survive.
And full disclosure, I was already someone that was, geared up and in that lifestyle. So it didn't take much. He just gave me the perfect excuse to go gung-ho and just to not care about life. And to live, I lived suicidal for like damn near 20 years.
Suicidal as in reckless behavior?
Reckless behavior. There's a guard in the tower holding a gun with a Mini 14 and then a spray paint on the wall right next to it, no warning shots. Broad daylight, 12 o'clock in front of God and everybody, 20 years old, just stabbing somebody on a yard.
Was there a part of you kind of hoping that gunner would take that shot?
I had moments. There were definitely moments. I wasn't like I never had a death wish, but I remember moments where I'm thinking I'm going to stay on this guy. And whatever, what do I have to lose? I'm going to die in here regardless. But then those moments would go, you'd think about your family, right. And self-preservation would kick in. But I definitely had those moments where I didn't care. Those days, there were really dark days.
There's a question I had been wanting to ask because it's kind of personal, but something I noticed that when young individuals got incarcerated, a lot of those dudes had not been with a woman and they had got life. You don't have to disclose if that was your situation, but did you ever come across individuals that had never been with a woman and they were incarcerated for life?
Yeah. It's funny too, because that was like the running joke.
Was it?
Yeah. So many times, like all the juvenile lifers, like, yeah, you're a virgin, well, know, but, I had been, I'm 15, 16 years old. So it wasn't, my body count's not high. Like a lot of guys in there, bragging they had been out. So it was extremely minimal. But yeah, but there definitely were guys in there that had zero experience.
That's wild, man. Because, people think about manhood and stuff like that. And you're thinking this dude just threw that opportunity away, man.
Yeah. And it's a trip too. I think part of that, I've always thought about that. Is I think that sort of contributes to the savagery of the person to a degree.
Oh, of course.
Because, as a man, every man needs like just a taste or something.
Absolutely. And that's why, in the Army and the Marines, the infantry, that's why there was no women at the time frame. It's just you focus on.
Oh, okay. That makes complete sense. Yeah.
It's just men and testosterone, the Spartans.
Yeah. But in that joke too, there probably were a lot more guys, but nobody would openly admit it. But yeah.
But in reality, that's a sad case.
It is. I know 50-year-old men that have never been intimate with a woman.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, let's go ahead and jump into these questions asked by the patrons, man. And then we're just going to shoot from the hip, dude. Okay. First one is, what are your thoughts on mass incarceration? Do you believe it's still prevalent?
Well, I see with all the laws that have like come into place that the legislation is a flood of people are getting released. I think mass incarceration now is mass reentry. So the reentry system, I think all the money that was, allocated for mass incarceration, it's getting shifted to reentry. Now, don't get me wrong. I think people are still going back in there at a high rate, but in terms of, do I believe that it's necessary? I just believe if you commit a crime, you belong in prison. But as far as the number rate, I'm not familiar with the numbers of people.
So case by case is what you're saying.
Absolutely, cool. Absolutely.
What is the most hilarious experience in prison and your favorite and worst prison overall?
So the most hilarious, the first thing that pops to mind is shout out to Conan from Santa Paula, wherever he's at right now. Walked out to the day room one day, drunk. He was in Kern Valley, drunk as hell, and just pissed his name all over the wall.
Damn.
Wrote Conan, SP12 on the wall in piss in the day room. Like it was hilarious at the time. His ass got whooped for that later on down the line, but that just popped in mind. Like right now when you asked me that.
Was everybody laughing?
Everybody was busting up. It was hilarious. And his name's Conan, so he's a big dude. He was a likable dude. It was totally out of character. That's probably what made it. He remembered it the next morning.
Oh.
Yeah, it was worst prison, Corcoran, because my time in the shoe right there was probably, I did 9 years back there, probably the most devastating time of my entire life.
What years were those?
2006 in the middle, all the way to 2015.
So for the viewers out there, kind of get an understanding how prison works, especially at that time, life meant life. You weren't going home.
Yeah.
Right. No, not much hope. No. Okay. You mentioned putting in work under the gun, which in turn will catch you a shoe term, segregated housing unit.
Yeah.
And this is the time you're talking about Corcoran?
Yeah.
And you're sitting in the back right there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about what doing shoe time was back then, because there was a lot of no tablets, no wind-up radios. What was it sitting back there?
So, the shoe is a jail within a jail. In Corcoran, it's bedrock. It's 2 bedrock beds side by side. Underneath it is it's just a cubby hole. You would get a TV after a certain amount of time, and the TV, there's a hole in the wall. They would plug the TV because we can't have access to outlets and stuff like that, fires and things like that. So you would get a TV, and that was it. Your books, if you're a reader, if you're a writer, there were artists in there. You create your own existence in there. But it's basically it's a box, and you create your life.
Now, at the time, because the individual dog cages came later.
Yeah.
Were you there before that?
No, the dog cages were already in place.
They were already
I was in the
place?
Tehachapi shoe before the dog cages, but in Corcoran, when I got there, they were already in place, yeah.
And what is it, 23 hours a day in the
cell?
cell?
They say it's 24 hours a day one day and then 22 hours a day the next day, because we would get yard Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So every other day you're not going out. Now on Monday, during the winter, there's fog. So erase Monday. Because you never go to yard during fog, on Tuesday, if there's incidents. So those are the numbers, but you rarely meet those, even that standard of numbers.
And a shower every 72 hours.
Every 72 hours, you get 5 minutes. They handcuff you in your tray slot, walk you to the shower. As soon as they take the cuffs off, the shower starts. Guys would take the soap, get soaped up. Remember, put it on their head just to save time. So as soon as the cuffs come off, boom, you're shaving. Because you got to shave your head, your face. You don't have time to shower. You would do the bird bath.
Right.
Yeah, because you only have 5 minutes.
And I know we were talking prior to this interview about the weights, the tobacco, the porn magazines.
Yeah.
What was it like having all of those incentives, so to say, and then as they started taking things one by one, did you guys feel that, hey, the system is messing with us, the guards are messing with us?
So when I first came in, it was that, I think they probably took the weights. I opened Salinas, so they didn't even put the weights there, but they had the weights on all the other yards. They took them within like the first 6 months. So I never really got to experience the weight pile. They took the family visiting, which I was a lifer. I would not have got family visits either way. But they just started slowly taking one thing. It was the packages, the personal packages. Your family used to be able to send you the personal stuff to where now you would order them. The porn went, the tobacco went, the clothes went. It was just one thing after another. But in the early days, it was the family visiting was the big one, because I was young and I remember hearing, chatter around and people saying if the family visiting goes, it's going to be a bloodbath in California. Understandable, I guess. This was your only access to your family, and by family visiting, it said 3 days. I never got one.
Yeah,
3 days. Whether with your wife, your kids, you get to experience a taste of freedom.
Food, cooking in the little kitchen.
Yeah, so I never got to experience that either. But it was supposed to be, and to my knowledge, nothing ever took place. They came and they went. What I did experience, the tobacco, I saw that go. I was never a smoker, so it didn't bother me, but I did see people freak out. And it only made the black market, even better. I saw the blues go. We used to have the button-ups. We used to have the Levi's, the belts. You get all Bonnarooed out to where it would just be the jumpsuits, which I liked way better. It was just easier to throw off and on. So, yeah, I mean, for me going in, conditioned and trained the way I was more trained to not want those things, to not desire those things, because they could be used as a tool against me. They could be taken, given. So I learned I lived a basic lifestyle, as what we say in prison. I traveled light.
Traveled light.
Yeah. I kept my basics, my soups, my rice, my beans, my books.
Now, were you schooled that way?
Absolutely.
You were schooled that way. So
most guys, when they come into prison, I don't know if it would like this for officers, but like your first cellies, the first people you're around sort of give you your style, I guess.
That makes sense.
It's who takes you under the wing, I guess.
And at that time frame, there was a lot of good people willing to show you the ropes the correct way.
Yeah,
because it was a different era.
Yeah, like we talked, there weren't the things to spoil you. You're going to store, you're spending $100 tops.
Which brings me to another question that reminded me, which was, what would you tell a brand new 20-year-old kid about conducting himself right now?
Sheesh. I mean, I have a policy of, I try not to be preachy or anything. I just give you the facts. If you go this route, this is how it ends. If you go this route, this is how it ends. Are you built for it? Are you built for it? Prison, what you're hearing in these songs is not true. What you're hearing on a lot of these podcasts and these war stories is not true. The majority of the time is you're going to sit alone in a box. Look at the numbers of the people around you that are going to tell on you. There's no future in it. And if you can't accept it from me, then you're going to have to find out the hard way.
That's actually going to help a lot of people, man.
Yeah.
And I honestly didn't expect you to say that, dude. But you're right. You're 100% right.
Yeah. If you want to go in there and be a gang member, do that. But understand this. You're going to get time added.
Facts.
You're going to lose family members. Hold your ground. Don't tuck tail and run. Stick with it. That's what you did. Or go to a group. Learn about yourself.
Right.
Get a trade. Get a business.
How much coping skills or life skills did you have at that young, ripe age of 18 in Salinas Valley, 19 years old?
Zero. All the issues that led to my incarceration still plagued me. It just kept getting worse. I became a better criminal. I became a better drug addict. I became a better gang member. I was only interested in just the negative aspects of prison, which it was pretty much all negative at that time.
At that time frame, did the California Department of Corrections, did they have vocational trades or educational?
I think there was one. There was masonry. They would call it behind the wall.
Yeah.
You'd see about 4 guys, because if you have a life sentence and you're a teenager, you're close custody, your points are elevated. I wasn't going anywhere. So I wasn't eligible for the vocations and stuff like that. I was only eligible for school. And I didn't have a diploma.
Now, were the inmates just attending those classes and courses just as a way to kill time?
Yeah. Yeah. Just like me, nobody was in there trying to get an education. Not because what are you going to do with it? I remember thinking, what am I going to do with this? I'm never going to get out.
Now, during that time frame, right, because I'm trying to paint the generational changes, What was the rapport with correctional officers like? And I know that there's certain rules that I know, the inmates are not supposed to talk to officers, but overall, the consensus, the vibe, what was the rapport like?
It was really, at that time, it was really intense, but there was like a high level of respect. And I think only because like a disrespect would lead to, a lot of bloodshed. And officers at that time were a lot different than they are now. They were ready to go right there. It was almost like they were another car almost on the yard. So, there was a respect there too, because, the bullets are going to fly. They're going to fight baton. There was one officer, Officer Torres, who he since passed away. He literally came into prison, like it seems like every prison I traveled to. He was a guy, when there was a code, man, he was diving, like arms broke, jaw cut. He would just keep coming back and coming back. And it was just a different breed at the time.
It was a different breed. And from your perspective, when you said you viewed the correctional officers as a different car, like I know what you mean by that. Do you view that as a bad thing, or because some people will say, oh, no, they're peace officers. They should be conduct themselves like professional, not say bad words, carry themselves to a higher standard. Or do you see why they carry themselves the way that they do?
Well, when I first came in, immediately, I just hated them.
Right.
Because I was taught to hate him.
Correct.
Despite the fact that I used to work in the kitchen, be like, damn, this dude is cool. I remember thinking one time, if I had 2 Laker tickets, I told the CEO, I'd take you, man. I can never tell nobody that, but because I got to fucking hate you, and I didn't know why. But, as you grow up and you see like, okay, this is a family man. He's trying to make it to work. And I understand in my later years, I would talk to COs that would say, I saw you come in at 18 years old. And I know you now at 30 years old. Remember that time when you got stabbed? Do you think that shit was easy for me? Like I literally watched you grow up. You were my barber. You were my clerk. I got to come to work. I got to keep things in check. But every day, we experience the same things as you. They're on the same yard, feeling the same energy, the same tension. So when I start to realize that, I start to look at people as human beings. But at the same time, I also knew that you have a job, I have a job. Your job's to get me, my job's to beat you at that.
Right.
So I once I got into a business mind state, but it's always been a really ugly relationship between blue and green.
Basically, it's a treacherous environment, but there is still that human factor. Right?
It creeps through.
So. And I agree. And I've seen in numerous cases, even if somebody an inmate that you knew, and he overdoses and he dies, and I think of one, Messersmith comes to mind. He was on D yard. He would work in the program. I was a lieutenant. He overdosed and he passed away. I remember thinking, God damn, dude was a youngster.
Yeah.
That's sad. That's unfortunate.
And I saw, when I was in Ironwood, we had massive overdoses with fentanyl before I left. And I saw it was the same team. It was the yard cops that respond to the code. Pumping, and I could see them stressed after when the guy dies. Like you fight for your life, and you're like, dang. And I would make it a point to go after him. Like I saw that, man. I appreciate that. And they're like, no, they don't want to talk about it. Like it was really messing them up. So if people could see the human part, but when you're in it, when you're in that environment, there's no.
Do you think the system is designed that way?
100%. And it's a trip too, because when new officers, like there would be new officers that would come in and I would see them, I had already been down and I would see them evolve as an officer, how they would be. Some would be cool, someone pulling you over, searching. Right. And I would be like, man, this guy turned into a complete dickhead, but it's not even his fault. He's just been inserted into a system that just kind of molds you the same way I am.
Groupthink.
It's exactly what prison is, 100% groupthink. And you got those, and it's a trip because you got those moments, those rare moments where, I don't know, maybe I'm just an inmate and a CO kind of maybe connect on something, a Laker game or something, and, maybe those little bonds, hey, what's up, man? And you got to keep, it's always so superficial because of that environment, but those are those human moments that happen, and they happen everywhere, but it's not cool. It's always suppressed because it's supposed to be.
Now, since you're here and we're talking on this subject, and I agree 100% what you say, man. Do you believe there should also be a line in the sand as opposed to what we are seeing now on the news, on the social media? Like, hey, you're an ADSEG inmate. You're in here for brutally assaulting a staff member.
Yeah.
We're going to pull you out and we're going to play foosball with you. You believe there should be some type of like common sense or a line in the sand?
You mean as far as like relationship wise?
Relationship wise, and or this new California model that they're pushing.
Yeah. There has to be a professional line. I mean, my relationship with officers was always professional.
Correct.
In my older years, it was easier to be like, hey, you catch the game and have some but it has to be, because all my friends that I've had, I've gotten in a fight with. Now, if you get in a fight, you're an officer active, and we're cool and we're friends, and we have an argument, we get in a fight, now hundreds of people are going to be running from both directions. This shit just doesn't work. It's not going to work that way. It's not a friendship.
I like that you said that.
I'm not there. You're not there you're there to protect the security, make sure, my job is to become rehabilitated, become a better person. Your job is to make sure that I do that, or that I don't stab somebody. Now, if we get caught up in conversation, I'm a really good manipulator. Let me get a young 22-year-old officer, and I'm in a wrong mind state. I'll have them working for me.
Easily.
Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, I don't know. I just, too many things can go wrong. There's really no benefit. Get out, become friends after,
Yeah. Not while in the profession.
Yeah. Especially in that environment. It's just not the environment to be.
So I know we kind of jumped back and forth, but I'm liking where we're painting the picture of how things used to be, where things are now.
Yeah.
Because generations, let's take men, for instance, men of the 80s and 90s are not the men of the 2020s and 2024s. What's your take on that? Have you seen them? How would you explain that change? Less
Testosterone.
Really?
From my cell in prison and, reading magazines stuff, I saw everything become softer. It even happened in prison.
Elaborate on that. Were you seeing the different youngsters come in the system with their dual letters, CDCR number?
Yeah. That would always be my job. Just because your CDC number has more letters than mine doesn't mean you know more than me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was definitely a different kind of person, and you would expect that. It's completely new generations. Things evolved. It didn't make it any less like crazy. Like, Jesus, like what the hell? Does this guy have a whole like Air Jordan sign across his face with a Louis Vuitton on his neck? Like,
right.
I'm like, whoa. Never had Louis Vuitton in his life. Couldn't afford a pair of Jordans. But this was like the legit, But hey, I didn't. It's the way it goes. Those are the youngsters nowadays, and you work with what you work with. And
was gangbanging in the past, and I did not grow up in that lifestyle, in Los Angeles. I know a lot of people seek validation. They seek that family bond.
Yeah.
Okay. I could see it back then, when you didn't have opportunities that you have now. I mean, you could literally make money off of your cell phone and just, we're talking about vending machines. You think there's any excuse to gangbang now in Los Angeles, or still go back to its territorial roots?
I think the motivation is different because, back then you kind of grow up in a neighborhood, and it's more of like a neighborhood aspect, whereas now people can have that experience on YouTube. Like, you can go through any neighborhood you want in Los Angeles and learn everything you need to know about it, so they can learn their styles and everything. I've met people from gangs that have never actually been to the neighborhood of the gang that they're from.
Wow.
Whether it be like in 18th Street or in Lancaster, that has never left Lancaster, or that's just
right,
just an example right there, something like that. And I only use that because that's one of the larger neighborhoods in Los Angeles. But yeah, it's definitely different in the look, the culture, 100%, man.
Let me touch back on another one of these patron questions. Who was your worst cellie and why? You ain't got to put that person on blast. But what would be a characteristic of having a bad cellmate? I
had a cellie, just a big lazy dude. I remember we had just arrived to SADF. It was to a new prison. And, you know, you arrive there. For me, I want to present myself right. I want to be up in the morning when they walk by my cell. I want them to see my mat rolled up, my light on. I want them to see me active. And this guy, you know, I like to be on the top bunk. I like to be out of the way. I like to do my reading. And he would just sleep till like 12 o'clock. So people would come and I'm up and, you know, and it's dark and the light's on. So I would clean the cell every morning. He was just a bum, like farting and all that. I ended up whooping his ass.
You ended up taking flight on him.
Yeah.
He fell off the top bunk.
Yeah, and hit his head a couple times on the way down, yeah. But that was my main thing, just sleeping in, lazy, because that was part of my survival, waking up and programming and consistent and patterns.
Hey, guys, consider becoming a patron where you will get first exclusive dibs on the video before it airs to the public, and you'll get to ask the guests special questions that you have in mind. So that's also another way to support the channel. Thank you, guys. Appreciate all of you. Keep pushing forward. Make sure you hit that link in the description below.
Patterns.
What did a normal day for you look like? To include an incident, right? You're going out to include, you hear an alarm, you get down, you prone out, you wake up, you drink a coffee. What did it look like?
So I wake up in the morning at 5 o'clock. First thing I do, I brush my teeth, I plug in my hot pot, I make my coffee, and I sit there. To this day, I still do it with my head kind of against the wall. And I just drink my coffee and I think for about a half hour, clean up my cell. By that time, going out to breakfast, come back, and it'll be yard. You know, in between that time, I'm stretching, I'm doing some reading, just getting ready for my day, for my workout. Head out to yard, 8:30, 9 o'clock. And, you know, having been enough time in prison, I don't need anybody to tell me when something's gonna happen in the yard. You immediately feel it. I pick up on patterns. You know, these two never walk together. What are they doing over there? Just the energy of it. And a lot of times you'll hear it like, hey, stay away from the bars. And the trip of it is even in my later years, you know, I got stabbed as a youngster in prison in Salinas Valley. And so for the rest of my prison career, whenever there would be an incident on the yard, you know, the tension elevates, it would spike my stress level.
Anxiety.
Back to that moment.
Yeah.
Even if I knew, okay, you know, they're going to hit dude over here by the handball courts, he owes money, no matter what, I know the whole situation.
The trigger.
I'm pounding sometimes. And I hated it because you don't want somebody to see you like that because that's a sign of weakness in there.
Ooh.
And I wasn't going to run anywhere. I wasn't going to do anything. I'm ready to stand, you know.
Right.
But it sometimes it did. It always did. But sometimes it would be bad. Even right before I paroled in Ironwood, they were going to do a little 2-on-1. Two youngsters were going to beat up another guy. It was nothing. They weren't even going to use weapons. But the energy on the yard, it just had me.
Let's elaborate on that. So I think you're referring to the time because I think I heard you tell this story. You might even said it on my podcast. You're talking about when you got caught in the rotunda?
Yeah. Yeah.
But were they blacks?
Yeah.
Did they mistake you for being white or something?
No. So there was an incident on the yard between the Southerners and the blacks, the Mexicans and the blacks. I wasn't out there in the yard at that time. I was at work. And I'd only been in prison about a year at that time. So I worked in the kitchen at the morning. I was a cook. So they would open my door at 4:30. It was 3 blacks and me and one other Mexican that were the cooks. And they came to my door after the riot happened. They said, look, what they were going to do is they were going to run the Southerners, the Mexicans were going to program one day, work, yard, everything. The next day they were completely shut down and the blacks would program until everything got, you know, squared away. So, you know, the Southerners came to my door and said, look, the cops, they don't know. They just see a white boy. They don't know your background or nothing. They're probably going to open your door to go to work. Slid me a big ass bone crusher. Said, protect yourself. Be ready. I got the speech. So 2 days later, sure enough, my door cracked, 4:30 in the morning.
180 design?
It's a 180, Salinas Valley. Yeah, it was D-Yard. And my cellie jumped up, I'm gonna go with you. I said, I can't, they're gonna see you, you know? Gives me a hug, I stick it in my pocket, and I walk through the day room. Now, in the 180 design, you know, they have that little window.
Real quick, and I don't mean to cut you off because I'm trying to find the source of where you said you would get the anxiety. Did you have anxiety then? Did you already know what time it was then?
No, 100%. I mean,
did.
yeah. I mean, I'm 19. It's a complete different vibe. You're on the streets, gangbanging with your homies, you're drinking, you're partying.
Right.
You can find the courage to do anything.
Correct.
I'm wearing a pair of pants, a t-shirt. I have a bone crusher, and I'm going in there with 3 grown-ass men. These are 40-year-old men.
And this
I'm terrified.
This is fight or flight. This is primal.
Yeah.
Basic human survival.
As my door's cracked, I'm getting dressed. My hands are shaking, and I'm thinking to myself, like, you're working yourself up into like a. What I
Now,
learned later, like
were
a
they making
bloodlust.
eye contact to you?
I didn't even know at the time. My door cracked, and I'm in C section. B section's right here. There's a window. They saw my door crack, just like they told me your door might crack. They knew my door might crack. I didn't know. I'm a rookie.
Right.
They saw me the whole time. I walked through the day room. They opened my door all the way. It's in my pocket. I walked through the day room as soon as I hit that rotunda.
As soon as you hit that rotunda.
On me. 3 40-year-old men.
Now, the way it's set up, because I've only toured 180 Designs, is the officer's area anywhere near there?
At 4:30 in the morning, it's the first watch.
Oh,
so
wow.
he's doing count probably in another building.
Wow, dude. So you were on your own.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
were on your
you
own.
had the tower.
But if he's not paying attention.
The ceiling is all glass, but the thing was, he was over in the kitchen area letting all the other kitchen workers.
So they were on you.
Yeah, we were going at it. For me, it felt like forever, but they said it was probably around 20 seconds.
And ever since that incident, after that, you would always get triggered when there was an alarm in the yard.
Yeah.
And that happened on your first year. So you did 29 years and 3 months. That's a lot of freaking spikes of anxiety.
Constant. And I had, it's a trip because now that I'm out, I've completed my sentence. I paroled GP. I did everything, that I was supposed to do.
Right.
I can say that for my entire career, it always in the back of my head, like, I don't want to get fucking stabbed again. I always thought, like, whether I did something right, wrong, is it going to be a mistaken identity?
Yeah.
It happened to me at a young age, and it just stayed.
Dude.
And I attribute it, like I told the parole board, me becoming a heroin addict because of that. Because I tried heroin about 3 weeks after that for the first time.
Oh, that's self-medicating.
Yeah, because people would come up. I took 27 holes.
27 holes, man.
At 19 from grown men.
And I think you told the story that you said you were proned out and you looked over and you saw the weapons on the floor.
Yeah, after it was over, we're all proned out. I saw 2 knives. You can see them wrapped, and I'm like,
What went through your head?
well, I was exhausted. I kept breathing because they handcuffed me, and every breath hurt. And I was like, fuck, they got me. And when I went to they put me in the ambulance, I went to the MTA. It was literally like a movie scene. I pulled off my gray shirt, I held it up, and you could see the lights. You could see the beams coming through, and I turned around, and there was no blood. The blood comes later that night. Like, it would soak my sheets for probably about 3 nights.
Now, did you earn a so-called quote-unquote profound respect
Yes.
for that?
That's like, it was like, sort of like my proof that I told you guys, like, I'm here. And people would come to my door and they'd be like, no, fuck those fools in. It felt so good. It felt so good.
Does reputation carry itself in prison?
Today?
Then.
Yes, 100%. 100%. And the reputation had to be down and violent.
Right.
Those were the qualifications, period. I don't care how much money you had. I don't care anything. Like, you had to be ready to take and inflict violence.
Now, I don't like violence, right? But I'm very familiar with violence.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people take notice that the California prison system is probably the most violent in the United States. I don't know, have statistics and stuff like that. And people have a hard time understanding how it's still racially segregated. And now we have come a long way since then, 2024,
for sure.
right? The peace treaty and everything that has been, trust me, from my perspective, that has worked.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, let's see, how can I pour this? You're basically, you're shoving in your brain, I got to be the most violent. I got to put in work. I got to earn a reputation. How much, from your perspective, did that harm you when you had to learn how to recover and go to group? It's like you learned how to do one thing one way your whole life. Now you have to learn how to undo it. Can you speak on that?
I'm still doing it.
Correct.
So what I discovered in my process of trying to unravel this mess that I made of my life, I came to understand what I call my second thought. So my first thought, even today, is solve a problem with violence. My first thought is if you're struggling, if you're hurting, self-medicate. Now, I put in a ton of work. I still put in work today. So my second thought is there right away. So I always tell myself, whenever I have it, get your second thought. So the work and the stuff that I have put in allows me to get to my second thought. And being aware of that, what my first thought always is. Now, if I stop putting in work, if I stop slacking, I stop working out, I stop trying to evolve as a human being, my first thought will gain traction and it will happen.
The two wolves, the good wolf and the bad wolf.
Exactly. And they say in what I've learned in addiction is if you have a thought for 8 seconds, it's going to become an action.
Wow.
And being aware of those things, I'm able to.
How much does self-medication, addiction, hinder the recovery process for self-growth?
You're walking up an escalator that's going down. You're never going to get there. I've tried. You'll never get there. I've tried so many times. I've tried to mix, manipulate a little here, some on the weekend. It just, for me, it doesn't work.
Does self-medicating solve your problems?
For about a half hour. And then
does it truly solve your problems?
Absolutely not. The last time that I ever used heroin, I was using a cell phone in prison. I got off I was told a very good friend of mine had been murdered. I had been clean for 2 years at that point. I got off the cell phone, went about 3 cells down. I knew where the heroin was at. And in my head, I said, I'm just going to go say what's up to the homie. This is what I'm telling myself. I knew what I was going there for. Hey, what's up? What are you doing? Oh, nothing, chilling. You got anything? Yeah. I had a needle in my arm about 5 minutes later. Woke up the next morning, totally destroyed my clean time, my 2 years, and my friend was still dead.
I have a similar experience, except it wasn't heroin, it was cocaine, and my friend was killed in Iraq, but similar, man. I got that phone call that, hey, Alan died, and immediately went to who I knew had what they had, and boom.
First thought. And the first thought always comes unless, people like us, we got one gear. I got one gear. It's go.
That's right.
So unless we keep that in check, whether, people say keep the monster caged up or because, we've lived lives that have just were unhinged.
Yeah, dude, for sure. I'm going to clip that for the trailer. At that time, right, and I'm painting the picture back then and now. Yeah. At that time, was it weak to ask for help or to even consider showing emotions?
Yeah, 100%. There was no vulnerability. There was no sharing in a group. You don't want people to know. I always say this. I have a really, really good friend. He's from Ontario. We came in at 18. We paroled in our mid 40s together. But for the first 15 years, I care about, I'll die for this guy. I'll put in work for you. You'll put in work for me. But I didn't know anything outside of his nickname and where he's from. That's just illustrates how little of what you share about yourself. Because that's really all that matters at the time.
Probably because the more that you share, the more vulnerable you become.
Even in my later years, when I began exploring change and learning things, I kept it to myself. Because if you tell somebody, hey, man, I'm trying to become a better person. I'm burned out on walking circles around this track and chasing dope and laying down on my stomach. I'm trying to go home, maybe start a business. That's crazy talking there. Like, what's up? This dude's about to go ass backwards. What's he talking about? Yeah.
Right.
That's how backwards it was.
So the original question I had asked you was, talk to me through a regular day, and you're saying, wait, hey, when a hit was going to happen, a stabbing, that anxiety would spike. Mm-hmm. Now, how often, you can answer or not, did you feel like using right after that? Did you subconsciously like, man, I don't like the way I freaking feel right now?
Always, yeah.
Always?
Yeah. When I look back, because at the time when you're in it, you're not really conscious of it. But looking back, those were like the big moments.
Correct.
Those I could line up every moment like,
for instance, when I came back from Iraq with full-on PTSD and survivor's guilt, I was getting messed up. The reason was I didn't want to feel any of that.
And I see it, especially like I see it with soldiers or people coming back from these high intense situations, and it's quiet, and you're out here, and you don't you need that. You need something.
We'll get to that, but I'm sure, and and I know we'll talk about the Pooch program because you were able to at least take courses or classes. How many years prior to you paroling did you start getting involved in self-growth and help?
So my grandmother died in December of 2011. It was in the subsequent 30 days after that is when I went through probably the most devastating experience of my entire life. Like on the floor, just completely destroyed. My grandma was the love of my life. She was everything. She adopted me as a child, the only consistent person throughout my entire life. She was supposed to be in visit there on Sunday. I went out there, and my mom told me that she died, and I was in the shoe, and I dropped. Repeat the question. I lost.
Was there any sense of guilt? Was there numerous emotions going through you? Because I could not imagine, honestly, man, and my heart would go out to inmates when they would receive that type of devastating news inside a prison. Because you're in there, dude. And
and this is at a time too, there was an officer there that he came by my cell, and I won't say his name, but he goes, "How you doing?" He knew what happened. He heard the phone call. They gave me a phone call after the visit. He escorted me back from visit. It's happened in the Corcoran shoe. And he goes, "How you doing?" He goes, "You need anything?" I go, "They're going to do a memorial for my grandma on Wednesday." I said, "I mailed the letter out. You think it'll make it?" He goes, "Is the letter done?" I go, "I'm going to mail it out tonight." He said, "Give it to me." And it got there overnight.
That's what's up, dude.
Yeah, it got there overnight. That was one of the most meaningful things that, like, the way I did, I wrote a goodbye letter. It was our last letter, and the pastor read it at the memorial. But it was an officer.
That's what's up, dude.
So yeah.
So 2011, you were devastated. Is that when you started?
That was the moment when I said something's got to change. That was the first time in my entire life where I said something's got to give. I want to live in a way, I want to honor my grandmother rather than these fools.
Okay.
I've given everything to these dudes. I've been stabbed. I've been shot by block guns. I've, dodged Mini 14, riot, you name it. My grandma just died. Fuck that. I'm gonna do it for her.
But at that time frame, the laws had not quite changed yet.
Not yet. And I didn't even know what that meant. What does that even mean? I didn't even have a starting point.
Wow.
So my first thing was the TV shows. I started different books. I started to slowly try to detach from unproductive conversations on the yard of what this dude's doing over here, or how many peanut butters he got and didn't share with us, those big issues,
right.
So that was the starting point, and it just slowly evolved. I'm still in the shoe, and in the shoe, it was snitch, parole, or die. I had no intentions of snitching. Parole, and so die was the option. But I remember thinking, I want to at least be a good person in here. I want to honor it. And that's when I came across the quote that said, "It's not the four walls, it's what's within the four walls that defines the room." That told me right there, this box right here, I could turn it into whatever I want. And that changed my life right there.
Dude, that's huge, because I don't think the public knows, there's really no incentive to be a better person in prison at that time.
None.
You know what I mean?
The death of my grandmother, the love of my life died. That was the only thing that could have turned me around.
And it's not easy to have that shift in mindset, because everything else is stacked against you. There's still the riots happening. There's still the violence. There's still the COs telling you to lock it up. Mm-hmm. There's still the dope everywhere. It's just, that environment does not foster positivity.
Yeah. So as soon as my mom told me, the visits are an hour in the Corcoran shoe.
Behind glass?
Behind glass. I had been back there at that point probably about 4 or 5 years. My grandmother used to come visit every weekend. And they opened the tray slot. They cuffed me up. As soon as I was cuffing up, they walked me. And the 2 IGI officers said, come with us and give your mom a hug today.
Wow.
They took their shot because, everything's filmed.
Right.
At the time, I'm a validated associate of a prison gang, so, up to no good. So they're paying attention to me. And, I remember just saying, man, take me to my fucking cell. I'm just trying to, I was biting the inside of my cheek and swallowing over and over because I didn't want nobody to see me. I didn't want to break down. That whole walk all the way back past those cages, all them men, and that was probably one of the most hardest walks I've ever taken.
It's basically a cat and mouse game, at that point, just
Yeah.
trying to get you to flip,
Yeah. And it usually works because the majority of people
It usually
did
works.
flip. Yeah.
Well, I've seen, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the majority of time, it's people through their own actions jam themselves up so bad, put their back against the wall, be it a drug debt,
Right.
being dirty politics, and boom.
Then they have no other choice.
You
but
have
to-
no
to-
other choice.
To go to the other side.
Yeah.
Um,
And that was one of my problems too, even today, where people equate going SNY with becoming rehabilitated.
elaborate on that.
The parole board, one of the big questions that us and the general population prepared for was this. And I'm a validated associate of a prison gang that got out because of a peaceful hunger strike, but I'm still validated. So their question is why didn't you go SNY? Now, they want to debate you into, well, they have gangs over there, and this, that's the wrong answer. My answer was, there was no threat on my life. I never felt my life was in danger. But because in their mind, going SNY means they want to know in their mind, you're on the hit list, you're wanted. Okay, now you can't go back.
That's what they want to see.
Someone who's essentially been validated or who's had years in the game. I could sit there all day and give you all
Right.
these great answers, walk
Right.
out here and just be a fantastic gang member. But they're more comfortable knowing, okay, yeah, your name's on a list.
So in their head, SNY equates to rehabilitation
Because
because you cannot go back.
yeah, or they see SNY as you saying, hey, I'm done with the gang. When it's actually, I don't know.
But that's not the reality of it
at
all.
I can't think of one person that says, you know what, I want to be a better person. Officer, I need safety. No.
Correct.
It's always
Correct.
the
Yeah.
and
I've sat on SNY yards. I mean, I worked there for 8 years,
Yeah.
SNY, and no, it's freaking wild, man. It is wild. That does not equate rehabilitation.
Yeah.
Now, is there some instances? Yeah, but it's case by
Absolutely.
case. It's man by man.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's course. Oh man, it's
And
a-
even in the courts, when they go to courts, they'll say, you go SNY. It just became sort of like the narrative. I don't, people would come in off the streets, groups, and say go SNY. And
there is no more SNY, so to say. They kind of did away with it. If an inmate comes up to you and they wants to request SNY, they're not going to go SNY, man. I think the department realized that it became something, its own monster, and they're trying to do away with it. And, they clearly don't know what they're doing.
I think a lot of it had to do too, when they started doing those mass validations,
Right.
so many people went SNY. And it's funny too, the first time, it was never SNY, it was always protective custody,
Correct.
PC. And I remember the first time when I went to the hole in SADF in 2004, this guy gets on my vent, he goes, hey man, are you active? I never heard that word. And I'm thinking, I wake up, I work out, I go, yeah, I stay busy over here. And he's like, no, where are you at? Your status. And I was like, it was weird. And then he said he was SNY and I don't know, it was just sort of like a softer word to use. And then it just took off. Everybody, the validations happened. So I got validated, and I'm a guy who reads tons of books. I get books. I write James K14664 on all my books. So when I'm finished with a book, I pass them out. We're in the hole, read them. Everybody that I passed my book out to got validated as an associate.
Oh, wow, dude.
And these are young, 20 years old, and they look at it like, I'm gonna go to the SHU for the rest of my life? Hell no. Gone. PC. Boom, boom, boom,
yeah.
boom, boom, boom. So there are hundreds of people were going for that reason at that time. I think that's when the scales from GP to SNY went.
When did you get involved with the Pooch program?
2017.
2017.
Yeah.
What was it called?
Positive change.
Positive Change?
Yeah,
What
Positive.
prison was that?
It was at Corcoran State Prison. So Zach Scow, the one that created Positive Change, he started it, I believe, at California City. Then it went to Wasco, New Delano, And then Corcoran was going to be the first ever level 4 GP dog program. And at Corcoran, like, it was destined to fail. Everybody knew it. The COs, everybody. But the 7 dogs came in. It was successful. We've had 0 recidivism rate of all the guys that have paroled that have been in the program.
Were you one of the first members of the Pooch program?
For the Corcoran, for that
Corcoran?
yard, I was in the first round. They did a total of 2 rounds right there. The second round, this should have been third, but the level of corruption in Corcoran is so bad that you can't even have a good dog program there.
Wow. Did you know that the program was going to come on board before? Did they give you guys like a brochure or a flyer or something, a poster? Did somebody come around and tell you, hey, we're thinking of implementing this new program?
Yeah, so I was coming in from Yard one day, and you know, they have like a memo board of the different programs or groups, and I saw this picture of like a silhouette of like bars and like a inmate with a dog or something. So I went up there. At this point in my life, I'm out of the shoe. Grandmother had died. I'm going to NA and emotional intelligence and Gang Members Anonymous. I'm trying to figure stuff out. So I'm signing up for everything. Definitely a dog. I haven't seen a dog in 25 years. Signed up my name. About a month later, I'm on the yard, I'm jogging, and my cellie goes, look, and you see this dude coming with a dog. And I'm like, damn, and he's walking across the yard. He's going through the Bloods and Crips, 405s and 415, and he's going different areas. So I'm moving, trying to get in his path. And I meet him. Hey, my name is Zach Scow. Hey, I'm Brian. I signed up for your program. Do you mind if I pet this dog? And he said, yeah. And you know, I got down on my knee in the grass on that yard, and I pet that dog. To this day, man, it was like in a spiritual experience. It was unbelievable. It was a pit bull who had been hit in the head with a hammer. Massive gash on his head. And I met this guy who's, you know, a dear friend of mine today. We're going to be going to Arizona on the 24th through the 27th talking about the program. But a month later it came, the trainers, 7 dogs. There were 20 of us. Damn. They specifically designed it in a way where me, you know, I'm white, but I'm a Southerner, you know, from Southern California. They paired me up with a African-American guy from up north.
Is that what they do?
Yeah, they'll take like your polar opposite. Somebody so far away from you, bring you together. So now we got to figure out. He goes to school. I work in the kitchen.
Okay.
So now we got to figure out how to train this dog. And, you know, in the process, you develop a relationship which you otherwise never would have had because there's no reason for me.
You mentioned Corcoran being corrupt. Did they utilize that against you guys? Is that what you're referring to, or no? Had nothing to do with like the different races or
no,
color?
It did. So
I could see politics getting involved that way.
Oh yeah, there were some people that hated the program.
COs,
officers, administration.
Okay.
Because
go ahead, shoot, bro. I'm giving you the freaking mic.
Yeah,
you say what you want to say.
Yeah, I mean,
what you can say.
Yeah, we're in Corcoran, so this is you know, one of the most notoriously corrupt, violent prisons in the world. You know, definitely, you know, in the country. That creates a culture and an environment. So I mean, you name it, it's like the downtown LA of CDCR.
Wow.
So when within the dog program, we were on point. Everybody had literally committed to this dog program. Like, we were not with the bullshit. Like, we were literally doing what we were supposed to do. Everything goes on outside. It is what it is. It's prison. The second round, we were coming near the end, and the officers and administration would send them, frisking them, the program, accusing them of stuff. So every time they would come in, it was so difficult for them to run the program. They would come in so flustered, and it's because at the time there's tons of dope, there's tons of phones, everything on the yard. And these people, on my grandmother's soul, brought nothing but love, dogs, leashes, had nothing to do with it. Now, whether they were the scapegoats for the people that were actually doing it, I don't know. But they harassed them constantly to where we lost the program for what would have been the third round. And for me, I ended up going to Ironwood level 3, and, you know.
So it worked out for you.
It worked out for me. But the 2 programs in and of themselves were a complete success.
One thing you had mentioned was that you had not seen a dog in 25 years.
Yeah.
Okay, when you said 25 years, dude, it took me back. Like, God damn, dude, 25 years is a long freaking time, dude. 25 years is 25 years.
Yeah.
Being in a cell, in a box, in a concrete. And I don't think the viewers understand how bad it sucks to be in a California prison, dude. Like, I worked there, and it looked like it freaking sucked.
And the thing too is, I mean, I don't always share it. I don't always say it, but like the time that I did was literally in a box. Like I didn't, and it was only until the very end that I got out and about. Like the first 20 years, Salinas, Pelican Bay, Tehachapi, like you're not going nowhere. You're going outside for maybe a day or two. Somebody's gonna get stabbed brutally or killed, and you're going back down. This was back in 2-year lockdowns.
Lockdowns, yeah. And I've talked about how there is no more lockdowns at all. Lockdowns are non-existent pretty much now.
Right before I paroled, like a murder is like a week lockdown.
Not even that, but I've seen them bring them up the next
a week
yard.
lockdown and maybe 6 months in the shoe.
Right. Yeah.
For a lifer or somebody in that lifestyle, why not?
Those 25 years, did they go by in a blink of an eye, or did they go by prolonged for you?
Long.
Long?
Yeah. Long and terrible. Long.
Was it year by year? Was it month by month for you? How were you taking it?
There were just some years that, because I wasn't raised and brought up in a way that would make me a person that can survive that environment. I had to get on board quick. Yeah, I was in prison for murder, but in those early stages, as a young kid, a gang member, really, I was a wannabe. I was just trying to get acceptance and I was just starving for that. I just wanted to be liked. I wasn't a dedicated, like, I'm here to tear shit up.
I heard what you're saying.
So when I got in there, it's Salinas, it's level 4. These are like real ass gangsters right here. So I had to get on board, and I had to get myself into a mind state, which I was able to do. But I did have a good foundation and a raising too, so it made it hard.
Do you think you were able to meet that threshold? Do you think you were able to get on that level as all the other?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, it's been years. It's probably still there, but I could work myself into it.
Oh, it's still there, man.
Yeah, I can, yeah.
And I say that because it's still there for me.
Yeah.
I remember I told a therapist one time at the Veterans Hospital, I told him, don't fix me all the way. I still want to be able to defend myself when things go. She's like, don't worry, Hector. That's always going to be a part of you. But she kind of laughed it off. Like, you know what I mean? You will always be able to defend yourself when you have to.
And that's why I always, once you're in that environment, once, like you say, that threshold breaks and it's go, like I share, like, why I don't have an off button. Once I go, so I'm very, so I do my work. I'm self-aware. I know what I'm capable of, what I've done, what can happen, what I don't want to happen.
Would you agree that this way of life is way better?
Way better.
Less stress?
Different stress, but way better stress. Like way better stress. Because at least there's an achievement at the end. Like, I used to be stressed out, politics and this and that. At the end of the day, there's nothing. I had nothing to show. At the end of the day, when I was sitting in that cell crying over my grandmother, looking back on my life, absolutely nothing to show.
Does Brian James have bad days today?
Absolutely. Terrible ones. And because, and a lot of times too, I want to share them. On social media, I'm a positive person. And I always try to, if I have to, restart my day. But I have terrible days. I'm completely confused in so many situations out here in the world. It's so frustrating. Really struggle days.
Congratulations, man. You're human.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I try to show also is like, hey, man, everybody has horrible days, good or bad. Doesn't matter if you're sober or not. Like, hey, life freaking comes.
Yeah. And it's hard. I'm a 47-year-old man who's just got his second job, who's on his first car.
That's what's up, dude.
And I'll go and have dinner with friends, and they're talking about 401ks and this and that, and I'm thinking like, you're so far behind. What are you gonna do? But like we talked about earlier, enjoy the process. The moment, it's beautiful, man.
Yeah,
beautiful.
You're really not far behind because you're leaps ahead in maturity and life experience.
Internally, yeah, right. Internally.
And that's all that really matters, man, is internally.
That's true.
Everything external is just external. That shit comes and goes.
Damn, yeah. I mean, those are things I need to hear because
Yeah, you don't want to lose your mind.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you lose this, you lose that, right? Because, it's not, I've lost my mind. It sucks, dude.
I've lost it too. And where I get caught up out here is I get caught up like in the comparison game.
Yeah,
Dangerous, man, especially in the social media.
right.
It's dangerous. And that's where the frustration, I'm a naturally person that is, I don't need motivation outside. I can find it inside. I'm harder on myself. I'm really hard on myself, too hard on myself, which helps me get to where I need to go, but it beats me down. I'm a natural low self-esteem.
Naturally low self-esteem?
Yeah.
So as they were passing the laws, you got a glimmer of hope, right? In the California Department of Corrections. Is that when something triggered inside you, like, hey, I have a shot, I have a chance? Or wasn't until you see the other people start getting action?
Well, okay, so when my grandmother died, I started with the idea. And then I started reading, watching things different. And then the law passed. And then I'm thinking, I'm still in the shoe. I'm still never going to go home. And then this hunger strike thing came out. And then just a series of things, the dog program. Once I made that decision in my mind, I said my prayers, just doors started opening. And they're still opening.
Right.
But I had to change my way, my mindset,
Right.
100%, which was so hard. Because I didn't want these dudes to look at me and be like, oh, this dude, you're lame, you're not with it, Now I could care less.
For the youngsters that are in the mix and care about other people's perspective or perception of them, how important is it? What other people think of you?
Now?
Yeah.
I do care what people think about me because I know that I'm representing, it's not just me, I'm representing people, so it's important for me. The only difference now is I'm not going to compromise who I am.
Excellent.
Before I would have sat and spun if you would have patted me on the back and say, hey, great job, Brian. Now I am who I am. I stand on my square and I don't step off my square. I don't compromise my principles, my beliefs for nothing. Yeah. And that's what I do. One thing I do want to tell you is what I tell youngsters now is tell me how this ends.
Yeah.
Tell me the end. How does it end? If you start basketball, you work, you want to go to the NBA, you do this, you want to do this, how does yours end?
Right.
Yeah,
I know how it ends. I know how that lifestyle ends.
Yeah, everybody does. And when you ask them, they're forced to confront it. Or I say this, I used to ask them in prison, how much time you got? 24 years old. I got 50 to life. I got 2 murders from my neighborhood. Why are you from your gang? Why are you from your neighborhood? You're ready to die for this? You're ready to kill for this? I better have a damn good explanation. Why? They don't have an answer. They don't have an answer. Gave your whole life away and you don't even have an answer. Me, I needed that answer.
One of the patrons asked, what's the best thing you reckon will keep you from never going back?
Just continuing to put in work, continuing to focus on my gratitude, on the good things in life, and to keep watching YouTube and watching all these people dying in prison and the chaos and all the stuff that's going on there. I look on there and I'm like, dude, I'm so glad that I'm not there no more, because it's getting worse. It's bad.
I like finding solutions, okay? What can the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation do to actually fix itself? If they had a magic wand, or how can they get through to people without mixing the people they're not supposed to be mixing? How could rehabilitation work?
I mean, I think you have to completely remove everybody and put a whole new system in place, or at least people. It's not working now. And I think from what I look at it, when I see the reentry in the prison, it's more about the money.
Correct.
This whole resource thing. See, when I got out of prison, the natural process for a lifer to get out of prison is you get out, you start working for, one of these prison nonprofits, you drive to LA, they give you your little $21 and it's all part of the system, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to move outside of that. It seems like the same the same system that I'm going to be a part of. And
That makes sense.
a lot of it, I didn't necessarily agree with a lot of the stuff that they're doing, their laws. And so, yeah.
You were on a GP for the whole time, right? You didn't see a lot of the weird shit that I saw. I saw some weird stuff.
I mean, I've seen some weird shit.
Or have you?
Yeah.
Now, from your experience, would you say that 100% of inmates are capable of being rehabilitated? Or are there some dudes that are off the rockers?
There are people that I'm so glad are in prison right now that I would not want out here, around my loved ones. They're just not ready. And it's different when you're out here in society, how quickly what changes, like,
right.
Your views and your thoughts and everything. I want my family safe. I have a Citizens app, and, you see the shootings and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, yeah, there's definitely people that belong in prison. And if you have a life sentence, you need to earn your way out, just like I did. I didn't get no free ride. I had to work hard. I spent 7 years dedicated just to completely coming out here and being the best person I can.
What would you say to that individual, that lifer that's sitting in this bunk, but wants to get out, but doesn't know how to get out?
They know how. Stop bullshitting. You know how. You know where to go. I mean, there's rehabilitation there. It's, I guess, can be kind of cool now. Like, it's sort of acceptable. Like, if they say, where are you going? I'm going to group.
Right.
It's not, you're not going to get clowned no more.
Correct.
A lot because you get time off. And so, people say, hey, I get early time off, but, I was going there to learn something. But there's definitely, if you want it, it's there. If you want it, it's there. There's no excuse. And it's free. Well, I remember one of the COs told me, he goes, where are you going, James? I said, I'm going to college. He goes, man, when my kid turns 18, I'm going to tell him to rob someone, come here, get free college like your ass. He said it, he's joking,
right.
But I looked at it like that, like, wow, free college. I'm going to do it just to blast the state out of $30,000.
Did you get your college degree in there?
I got 2 certifications, my alcohol and drug study specialist, addiction studies, yeah. I took some business classes as well. And I was certified in animal behavior and dog training 101.
How important to you is that? And I refer to it as pooch program, bro, because that's all I
No, that's
refer
cool.
to.
Yeah.
How important is that, or how big of a part of life is that in your life now?
So, okay, I had been down for 25 years when I joined that program. That was the first time in my life that I had been called something other than, and the second they called me a dog trainer, referred to me, and the sign on my door said dog trainer, it impacted me. Because, I had been inmate, convict,
right.
Worst of the worst, all those names, all those titles. So it's huge. Not only to have a title, I had a job. It starts to work with your mindset in the same way that I had a nickname and I had a job.
Right.
Get this dope to this building or.
No, that's cool.
Yeah. So it's in terms of just like me, the way I looked at myself mentally and stuff like that, it was huge. It was huge.
So what's next for you on the horizon? What plans you got? What goals? Or what do you see? Where do you see yourself in the future?
So at 824 days right now, I'm learning, I'm gathering information, I'm growing, discovering what I want to do in this world. So I have an audiobook that's coming out that should be at the end of this month. It's about my time. It's about my 3 months within the dog program. I'm working on another, like a complete book about my life. We're in pre-production on a film called The Lifer right now. It's about my life story. And just keep putting in work, man, grinding and accepting all blessings that come this way.
That's what's up, man. So I know you're big on Instagram, but where can people find you? If somebody had any questions like, hey, man, I'm interested in doing this, where can people reach out to you?
I'm at Free Bliss, FreeBliss1. And I'm active on Instagram. I go back and forth with people. I'm open, questions and stuff like that.
What last words do you have for the viewers?
The last words are, I had a life sentence. I was addicted to heroin. I was sitting in a jail, inside of a jail, and my grandmother had just died. And I was looking at that vent, figuring out how I can kill myself as fast as possible, because I had thought about it before, but I just didn't have the courage to do it. But I had nothing to live for at this point. And I had seen suicide. I know how to do it. I'd been in prison long enough. And I closed my eyes and I said a prayer. I didn't see bright lights, nothing. I didn't have a big epiphany, but I woke up. I came out of that prayer deciding I'm going to kill myself tomorrow. I'm going to put it off for a day, because I know my grandmother wouldn't be proud of me. The way I was raised, suicide was like a sin. And that was my prayer, that, I'm going to do this one last thing, but I got to catch up with grandma. But my point is, I couldn't have been any lower in life. And it took a while, but I peeled myself off that ground. I figured out life. Like, if I can do it, like, it's possible. That's my only message. And that's why I'm out here trying to just be as vulnerable, and it just with everything that's going on, is it's possible. I don't care how low. I deal with mental health today. My addiction attacks me in my head every single day. But I put in work. I refuse to go back to that. And that's my message.
Dude, that's what's up, man. I didn't know you before, but I know you now, right? And I know similar struggles that you have gone through, dude. And I commend you, bro. I'm proud of you, to be honest. I follow you on Instagram, and I see the gratitude that you have posting every day, dude. And I think to myself, man, look at this guy, so grateful for the day. He has a day counter, and you have people in the civilian world now complaining, moping around, acting like they don't got shit coming, right? Freaking sense of entitlement. And that's kind of the message I want to relay to the public. It's like, hey, man, it doesn't matter how fucking down and out you are. There's always going to be fucking hope, right? And if you don't put in that work, you're going to fucking stay there. And it's going to be long and painful and fucking slow.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming on the show, Brian, dude. Your first episode, man. Yeah, I appreciate you, bro.
Absolutely.
And yeah, dude. There you guys have it, folks. Stay tuned. Like, follow, subscribe for more episodes. We'll be dropping a new episode every week. Thank you. Keep pushing forward.
You've been listening to Hector Bravo Unhinged. Follow for more.